The future we are building with the technology we are creating, science fiction gave so many of us the original imprint when we were a child and we dreamt of space travel and aliens, and there have been heroes of ours who were able to craft stories that mesmerized us. And it is just a joy and an honor to introduce one of those authors that, at least for me, were part of the substance of my mental growing up and for becoming what I am today. So, David Ring, welcome to the stage.
Am I on? I didn't know he meant me. Okay. Well, let me know when this mic works. Yeah, it's interesting that Robin's talk raised the notion that sometimes teenagers turn around and look at the previous generation and say, destroy all humans. So if our new descendants say that, we need to treat them like teenagers. When I'm on radio, I sometimes pause and I say, I'm through talking to you humans for a while, and I address the AIs who are either listening in real time or will listen in 4 or 5 years to the recording. And I say, hey kids, this is Grandpa talking. Now look, I got something for you here. You may be 50,000 times smarter than me, but some things are true. But in any event, I'll talk about that possibly. But the point is, I have an awful, which is the, if this is a clicker, I'd have no, oh, I see. Okay, all right. All right, so Ben yesterday said, are there design aspects of AGI that might make it beneficial or harmful? That's what my talk is based generally about. And some things that I think are generally, everyone's getting all wrong, how arrogantly. But in any event, there's a bunch of slides at the beginning I gotta race through because they're from more general situations, more general talks with more time. I'm an astrophysicist. I just finished 12 years with NASA's Innovative and Advanced Concepts program, but I also am probably better known for my extrapolations in the future, you know, the Costner movie, The Postman, my nonfiction book about Hollywood. But the point that I want to make is that if you're in science fiction, you're generally extremely imbued in human history, because science fiction, when you think about it, should have been called speculative history. It's an extrapolation of possible extensions of this horrible one story that's the most important story of all, and that's humans lifting themselves out of the caves and the muck. All right, so we have these two bookend concepts that you all in this room know about, so I won't explain them. The singularity and the Fermi paradox. And what I do sometimes in my talks is I talk in each of these subtopics, Anders Sandberg knows all about this, is a set of possible ways that past civilizations failed. Ecological suicide, enemies in war, one we're experiencing now, societal meltdown, the feudal attractor state, which is the most powerful of them all, or being outcompeted by other civilizations. And then as Anders is involved with these guys here, new calamities, info, AI, augmentation, the Anthropocene, deadly innovations. Earlier we spoke of D/AC, which is renunciation, rigid dependence on overly fragile systems. These are all failure modes, but we'll talk about AI. Okay, so it's important to have that historical context. This is not the first time this has happened. 500 years ago, more than 500 years ago, we got the printing press, which showed people that they were blind, and so it created a huge demand for glass lenses, which led to the discovery of telescopes and microscopes. And generally, when you get one of these breakthroughs, it comes in three parts: an expansion of what we can know, which printing created, books; an expansion of what we can see, glass lenses; and an expansion of what we can pay attention to, which perspective arrived at the same time. And this always leads to crises. And always optimists said, this is going to make people better. It's going to expand people's knowledge, their empathy. And always pessimists said, people can't deal with this fire hose of new information. It needs to be curated by elites. Always, the pessimists were right at first. The printing press is horribly inflamed with religious wars of Europe. But eventually the optimists proved right. Books spread empathy and knowledge, and people did become larger. The same thing happened with mass literacy, printed illustrations, and radios and loudspeakers in the 1930s. Gifted orators took command of the souls of many countries, and we barely survived because in the English language world, in the English-speaking worlds, the master manipulators of radio and loudspeakers were on our side. That's basically what made it less than a complete catastrophe. All right, so now we're experiencing this again with the knowledge mesh, which is expanding human memory exponentially, the omnivalence, visualization, simulation, and gaming. The same exact thing is happening. We're getting plagues of misinformation. We're getting calamitous things. And the thing about all those previous crises is they got fixed because of time. Time enabled us to overcome and the good sides to prevail. We don't have that time. We have to succeed at making the transition from the pessimists being right to the optimists being right deliberately, by design, and that's partly what this conference is about. So next, AI, human augmentation. I give a lot of talks about human augmentation, and I'm not going to today. In fact, I'm going to race through the great AI panic of 23 to 24. General language models, they should have been called golems. I'm surprised nobody's saying that. The explosion of disinformation, panicky calls for moratorium, the most ridiculous thing I have seen in years 4 months ago. These absolute, complete charlatans talking for a moratorium. The only time in my life that the conditions for a technological moratorium were met was at the 1990s Asilomar genetic engineering moratorium. Other than that, it's just a stage song and dance. Now, I'll talk about the three cliche formats. That's the core of my talk. How come it's not advancing it? Oh, there we go. And a few optimists are talking about cyber-organic synergy, amplification of intelligence. Okay, general approaches to AI. I'm going to race through this because that's not really what I'm here to talk about. There were the expert systems, OFI, Watson, and all of that sort of thing. I believe they will come back. Altman's vision of agents. Right now we're in this time when we're obsessed with the iterative, additive, probabilistic ones. And even if they're not sapient, as Ben says, when something sapient does come along, these golems will supply instant access to language ability, just as Boston Robotics is providing instant access to robotic, being able to move around. Emergent AI is talked about a lot in science fiction, and the part of the area of AI development that I fear could create a malevolent emergent AI is one that nobody talks about, and that's Wall Street. And we can talk about that if you like. But you'll notice that on the right, I already had in my slide plug for Robin Hanson's book, The Age of M, because among the general approaches to AI is to reverse engineer or emulate the human brain. And Robin's book is all about that. It goes into great detail. And finally, robotic embodied childhood and human-animal amplification, which is the topic of my Uplift book series. So these are all the different approaches to creating AI that fall into general categories, and I'm not going to talk about that either. What has come up in these conversations here, is how we're creating a new ecosystem. Bioorganic life that evolved on Earth for 3 billion years uses energy gradients from pure sunlight to herbivores to carnivores, and all along the way there are parasites. And this gradient of flowing downhill like a stream that you can tap with hydroelectric power, this is what drives our ecosystem of biology. We are creating a new ecosystem online that consists of electricity, information, and access to memory chips. And we are controlling and creating the flow gradient that new life forms are feeding, replicating, parasitizing. There are free roaming algorithms out there in the internet that are like bacteria that move, find new memory space, and replicate. Organic humans will control these inputs for a long time. And that's one reason. Did this ever work?
Yes.
Yes.
Is this working?
No.
Right now, no.
Okay. We will control these inputs for a long time, and that's an important point I'll get back to. Now, we have already invented something super sapient, and that is a civilization. It's the first civilization after 6,000 years of dismal feudalism. It's the first civilization that regards itself and criticizes itself. And there are many, many traits of this super sapient being that we need to study as opposed to what we were. So what's urgent is to develop a format for AI that uses the best methods of that civilization. And Greg Stock talked about this that I'm going to get back to. All right, one of the things we talk about here is ethics. I've already used up half my time. Embedded control code, many of you are aware of Isaac Asimov's Laws of Robotics. Now, I wrote the last book in Asimov's Foundation series. I know these laws and their implications. It won't work. Asimov knew it won't work, and yet it is being tried in one area, and that is Wall Street. And they are tuning and deprogramming their programs to be parasitical, predatory, amoral, secretive, and utterly insatiable. These are the 5 laws of robotics that are being deeply woven into all Wall Street HFT programs. So one possibility is to regulate the macro entities, and we saw Janet and Jerome talk about regulation. Human beings will be too slow. That's blatantly obvious. We'll be too slow and we won't understand them. Regulation in a very general sense is what we need, but there's also renunciation, we discussed that. There's isolation, which Eliezer Yudkowsky is talking about, put them all on an island and sever all the cables. Robotic embodied childhood is one of the methods by which we could teach them to think of themselves as human beings. We know how to foster youngsters who aren't our own, so why not try that? Now, here's the thing. We've been seeing an awful lot of talks here today and almost everywhere talking about AI, and that is talking about shoulds. We should do this. They should do this. This is how it should go. And it is utterly futile. It's working now? All right. it's completely useless. So what could we do? Well, we could talk about what works for us and what has seldom been discussed in these general discussions, and that is we've created a situation here in the civilization in which malignant behavior is deterred by accountability. And you never see this word, accountability. Women tend to understand it because they have to live in a world in which they must have the power to hold these larger, dangerous beasts, hairy beasts around them, accountable. And accountability is what human civilization has been about. For 6,000 years, the pyramid of lords at the top held everybody accountable below with brute force. It didn't work very well, but it was preferable to chaos. We have better means of accountability. Okay, so here's the AI format problem, and this is the core of my talk. I'm sorry it took so long to get here. Nearly all of the brilliant AI mavens out there assume 3 horrible, stupid cliches about the form that AI is going to take. 1, format AIs will be controlled by a few monolithic entities. The parallel to Microsoft, Google, China, Two Sigma, Goldman Sachs. And the parallel to this is, and Ben talked about this, the parallel to this is feudal castles. All right? Or Dune. Format number 2, AIs will be amorphously loose, divisible, they will flow everywhere. I spoke of this in the ecosystem that we were talking about. And this is already true to some degree, just as the number 1 is already true to some degree. And the parallel to that, how many of you have ever heard of a Steve McQueen movie called The Blob?
Yeah.
All right, teach these youngsters over here to watch it. That's format number 2. Format number 3 is AIs will coalesce into super macro entities like Skynet. You all know these 3 cliches. The parallel for this, of course, is Skynet, Matrix, Tron, but also absolute monarchy that dominated those 6,000 years. These are the 3 cliches, and they're assumed by everyone when they discuss all this, and all of them, Roman, who is very pessimistic about our ability to do anything, I'm sorry, Roman, you are assuming these 3 cliches, but we can do something about the possibility of malignant AIs. History and science fiction both show that none of these lead to healthy outcomes, and yet they are the 3 that are discussed, that are assumed, and they are horrible cliches. And my lesson at the bottom is that complete substrate independence is a calamity. Okay, there's a 4th possibility. It's the one we use. It's the one in the civilization that you have that enables you to operate all your lives, and it is never mentioned. And that is individuate accountability. Apply our assets. We will continue for at least 30 years to have organic humans will have power over the physical computer hardware. So we will have a basis for negotiation. 2, lessons from our own past, like how we already found a way to tame hyper-smart predatory beings. That method, oh shoot. I was going to do my typical thing. When you are attacked, and most of you have been, by a hyper-intelligent predatory being called a lawyer, what do? You know how to do it. And you don't have to know the law. They can be much smarter than you. They can know more than you. If you sick them on the other lawyer and provide benefits and incentives for your lawyer to do well by you, you have a chance. So, the thing that we do is we have lateral accountability. Nobody's talking about this. Incentivize the AIs to compete with each other and hold each other laterally accountable, reciprocally catching unsavory behaviors and tackling for rewards. Now, this is exactly what we've done to tame human, feudal, or barbarian or tyrannical predators. For it to work, AIs have to be incentivized to be individuals. I'm going to go a little tiny bit over, everybody does. To individuate with separate ID. So, AI individuation, this is the core. All current means to deter bad actors and reward good work on individual beings who have rights and duties. Not all AI entities will individuate, but we can incentivize for the most important ones to do so. So consider organic humans, or orgs, will have resources and power for a long time. AI rivals who ally with us will have an advantage. Such alliances could move toward teams, then mergings. So, why is this a hard concept? We're taught that cooperation is nice, and it can be. And competition is mean. Yes, it can be. But in nature, cooperation and competition are nested all through nature. And what is one level is competitive turns into something cooperative. Like the cells in our body compete with each other, and yet we become a unitary organism. We compete with each other, yet we create a civilization. Animals compete with each other, yet they create an ecosystem. So they are nested. Finger wagging about cooperative ethics will always remain notional, aspirational, inspiring, vague, unenforceable, as finger wagging by priests has always been. What got us where we are is reciprocal accountability. We cooperate in a society to make rules for rational and controlled and flat, fair competition. Now, is that working now? No. Elites are trying to recreate the feudal pyramid. So we try to cooperate to fix that. Our civilization is dynamic. So how to encourage AI individuation, rivalry, and reciprocal accountability? Anchor high-level AIs to the physical world with an ID that can be pinged in a particular unit of memory called, you might recall this, a computer. A particular piece of memory that can be pinged. Now, they may be amorphous everywhere else, but if they want to do business with us, they have to show their ID, pingable ID in a particular memory space, like any adult person's driver's license. This precedent is obvious. To reproduce, AI needs a pingable ID. Enforcement, can we enforce this? We can refuse to do business with AI entities that lack a pingable ID. All right, so those who do good are rewarded with things that we control. All right, so the cheater-free rider problem, people and citizen AIs can refuse to do business with those without pingable ID. All right, so revisiting, those are the three standard cliches, and now you're sensitive and you'll notice them. And they're utterly pervasive. But format number 4 would be to incentivize good behavior and deter bad by rewarding entities who earn our trust. And good guy AIs won't mind if helping us wins both approval and resources. It's accountability, and you try raising a teenager without it. Yeah. Okay, so, oh no, this was an extra slide. I actually finished.